Coaching searches are going on everywhere. You cannot walk around the SEC without seeing a coaching search happening on your nearest street corner. It's happening all over the place. Except at LSU, where they can't even get the search really started in earnest because they can't figure out what they're doing. Meemaw would say they can't take a leak without getting the front of their pants wet at LSU right now. It's sort of embarrassing to watch. So if you've been living your life and you haven't been following this, Brian Kelly got fired down there, you know that. And Brian Kelly's owed a whole lot of money, because LSU signed their name on the dotted line of a contract that guaranteed him a lot of money if they fired him. They fired him. They owe him a lot of money. Shockingly, they don't want to pay it. And so this is now going to play out in a courtroom, and it would be okay if it played out in a courtroom as long as it didn't play out in the court of public opinion. But loose lips, especially motivated loose lips, can sink ships very quickly. Mima also said that. And so now it's just out there. Everyone's reporting on it. And the grand sum is that if I am a candidate for the LSU job right now, if I am Lane Kiffin, for example, I am watching my prospective future employer take my predecessor to court to not pay him money that the contract they signed with him says that they owe him. Now, if you're just a viewer at home, you think, there goes LSU again. Boy, they're crazy about football down there. That is not the reaction. Let me emphasize for clarity and emphasis. That is not the reaction that prospective candidates for this coaching opening have when they watch possibly their future employer try and prevent themselves from paying money that's owed. It's not a good look. So it's going over how you would think it's going over. Sometimes there's a lot of drama and it's much ado about nothing. This is not that. So I've hit up some people today, yesterday. I've kind of been in contact with people about the whole structure of LSU throughout this whole thing. And the general sentiment had been, yeah, it's a little messy, but don't worry. They don't have to make a hire this week. So they've got a little runway. They can get their affairs in order. Let's get the president, then we get the AD, then we figure out who's on the search committee. And then you start doing your Zoom interviews, and then you do your in-person interviews. And by the time that an offer is put in front of a candidate, there'll be a lot more familiarity, and we will have smoothed things over, and that's all gone. That's all gone. The thinking now, I flat out asked people today who would be involved and who would know about the search. And I said, is this hurting things like I think it is? And they said, yeah. Multiple people, not just one person. So I have no idea how to tell you the LSU search is going because it's not going. How can it go right now? So you have to, look, the whole point of firing a coach is to upgrade. In today's college football, you have to be an unequivocal upgrade for a qualified candidate. So, of course, if you offered the job to a G5 head coach, almost certainly he's going to take it. Maybe aside from like a John Summerall, like the highest commodity G5 coaches. Like you go offer the job to a high school coach, he's probably going to take the LSU head coaching job. It doesn't matter how big a disaster it is. He'll sign up for the money and say, fine, fire me in 3 years. I don't care. It's got to be an unequivocal upgrade for a qualified candidate. There aren't many qualified candidates to be the head coach at LSU that are upgrades from Brian Kelly to begin with. The ones who would be upgrades, the ones who would be qualified, normally have good jobs already. So you have to convince them that your spot is a slam dunk, inarguable upgrade from where they already are. Do you think Lane Kiffin right now looks at the state of affairs at LSU and thinks, well, that's better than what I got going on here at Ole Miss? They do anything I want them to. I've got minimal invasion from outside influences. I get to act pretty much however I want here. I am winning. I am competitive in NIL. They love me here. I claim to love it here, and I say that sarcastically. I think he really does. Do you think he looks at that right now and says, yeah, that'd be an unequivocal upgrade from what I have? He does not. Or if he does, he's wrong. So they got to get things figured out pretty quickly down there. I'm here. If you guys need to talk, I'm here. Now, Auburn, on the other hand, a place that historically has been prone to train wrecks behind the scenes, pretty much has their act together. I talked to you about this last week. I said the perception is not the reality with Auburn. The perception is people playing on old stereotypes about Auburn, and the further you get away from the program, the looser people are with saying that kind of stuff, and they don't really know what they're talking about. At Auburn, I think there's really good alignment. At Auburn, I think there's really, really good structure. The proper people are motivated to make the right decision here, and as a result, I think they had a really busy weekend. From what I hear, they had a very productive weekend. And I think they're much further down the road than LSU is, maybe even than Florida is. And I don't even compare Auburn to maybe the Arkansas or Virginia Techs of the world because they're fishing from a different pool of candidates. And truth be told, if there is overlap between the candidate pool at an Auburn versus an Arkansas or a Virginia Tech, it's because Arkansas or Virginia Tech would get the leftovers that remained in the pool after Auburn fills their spot. I'm trying to be respectful about this, but that's the way it is. So Pete Nakos of On3 fame, Jesse. On3's Pete Nakos. It's on his birth certificate. On3's Pete Nakos put out a little article earlier today. Not before he stopped in my office and gave me my own personal update. I like to compare what I'm hearing with what young Peter is hearing. Same things. Same things. Pete has his ear to the literal ground during the day. And so he put out a piece today that said, hey, John Summerall's a strong candidate here. DJ Durkin's going to get a look. Look, you guys know as well as I do, if DJ Durkin were to have beaten Vanderbilt last week, this would already be very loud. If they beat Bama at the end of the year and they win the Iron Bowl, which is going to be like Super Bowl time down there, they probably need to win that game to make a bowl. I think that's how the math works out. Durkin's going to be really, really strongly in consideration. But as of right now, I'm not backing off what I've said. My stance for a while has been, if I'm Auburn, I am absolutely going after John Summerall. I have not thought that he's the only qualified candidate. I've just thought to myself, if I am, describing what I want in the Auburn head coach, that guy meets all my criteria. That's me. I'm not talking about theirs. That's me. So I think he's very strongly in the mix here. I would call him the favorite to get this job, but not like a 90% overwhelming favorite, because I think they're still doing their due diligence. They're going through their process, and that due diligence has been done. That's the important thing to note here. Not that it's a race. When you get the right guy, you get the right guy. It doesn't matter if it happens Tuesday or Friday. When you get the right guy, you get the right guy. But it is competitive. And so it is in your best interest to be ahead of the pack, and I think Auburn's ahead of the pack right now. Arkansas, just to talk about them quickly, they've done their due diligence as well. I think they've got to wait. Okay, if they're competing with Auburn, they're not really competing with Auburn. Auburn is a better job than Arkansas. And so, let's just take Alex Golish as an example. This is strictly generic. I want to emphasize that. If Golish wanted the Auburn job and Auburn said, we're going to go in a different direction, then he's a candidate for Arkansas. If offers are on the table from both, I think Alex Golish or any other candidate probably takes the Auburn job before Arkansas. That doesn't automatically mean Auburn gets a leg up on you, because you could have your perfect candidate fall in your lap. All I'm saying is, whether it's him, whether it's James Franklin, whether it's any of a number of other candidates, you may have to play a little bit of a waiting game, which I know it feels like you already have been, because you have. That's the current state of affairs at Arkansas. As for Florida, I don't think anything's changed at all. I think they're just waiting on Lane Kiffin. And a lot of people down there that I've spoken to feel really good about where they are with Lane Kiffin. They may have reason to feel good about it. I have told you guys many times, I will not discuss this with head coaches during the season. So I'm not going to be the one to hit Lane up and ask him what he's thinking. It has been my opinion that he has not made his mind up yet, but if someone at Florida knows different, good on them. This week at LSU has to have helped Florida's cause. It can't have hurt. It cannot possibly have hurt Florida's cause. So until further notice, if I were a Florida Gator fan, I'd just be buying the Lane Kiffin stock. And if they need to pivot, they can pivot. And it's not like they've been sitting down there saying, we're not going to do a thing until Lane tells us no. Of course, they've worked on contingency plans. And truthfully, there are probably some really good candidates out there that are on that contingency board. I think it's Lane. That's been one of the easiest coaching searches to see through. sometimes you get this wrecking ball out of left field at the 11th hour, and a name comes in that you never thought existed. I don't know that that's the case at Florida. Then again, the state of a wrecking ball, the very nature of a surprise wrecking ball is you wouldn't know about it.